My name is Jordan Rivers, and 3 hours ago, I assumed control of my family's century-old engineering empire. Even now, the memory of that instant sends a shiver down my spine. I was seated at the head of our mahogany dining table in our family's Tudor-style estate on the outskirts of Melbourne, Australia. An estate that sprawled across 5 acres of meticulously manicured lawns and gravel paths. My father, Marcus Rivers, wore his usual tailored charcoal suit and a smug expression. He regarded my simple linen shirt and dark jeans as though I had shown up in rags. My younger sister Alexandra sat to his right, her posture impeccably upright in a designer day dress. "Jordan," my father said, voice measured and cold, "perhaps you could tell us why you are even here this evening." His words carried a heavy irony. Tonight was the annual Thanksgiving celebration we had imported from my mother's American heritage. A gesture meant to emphasize unity, but which always descended into demonstrations of family hierarchy. I offered him a thin smile and nursed my sparkling water. Marcus Rivers had never believed I was capable of anything beyond heirlooms and seasonal celebrations. Ever since I was a child, I had been the one who asked too many questions about our manufacturing processes at Rivers & Sons Engineering. Why does our robotics division still rely on pneumatic actuators when magnetic linear drives have proven more efficient? I would ask. Why hasn't our maintenance crew adopted predictive analytics to prevent unplanned downtime? My questions always earned a condescending chuckle or a curt, "That's how things are done, Jordan." Leave the technicalities to the professionals. My sister Alexandra, ever the dutiful daughter, rarely spoke, but when she did, her tone matched my father's. "Brother, perhaps you should stick to your art classes," she had once suggested, flicking a glance at the watercolour set I had been experimenting with at 14. It was an insult disguised as concern. In the Rivers household, appreciation for aesthetics was only permitted if you were following the family's designated creative pursuits. Alexandra's mother, Eleanor, insisted that a Rivers woman must maintain the gracious public image of the company's social liaison. Tonight, however, I was not simply the accidental guest or the family's artistic misfit. I was the new proprietor. My phone buzzed gently in my pocket, and I stole a discreet glance at the screen. The message read, "Acquisition of Rivers & Sons. Engineering completed. You now own 100% of family holdings." I looked up at my father's smug face and returned his gaze steadily. There was a silence so profound that I could almost hear the tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. The weight of 4 generations of Rivers men, all of whom had prided themselves on dominance and control, pressed against the vaulted ceiling. My father cleared his throat. "Are you well, Jordan?" His concern was theatrical. All around the table, my relatives shifted uncomfortably. Uncle Sebastian, our chief legal advisor, bit his lip. Cousin Helena, the heir apparent to our charitable foundation, glanced at me with wide eyes. No one knew what to make of my calm composure. I closed my eyes for a moment and drew in a slow breath. Then, with deliberate ease, I spoke. "I am more than well, Father. In fact, I'm exactly where I need to be." I placed my phone on the table, screen up, as if offering physical proof. "Rivers & Sons Engineering now belongs to me." An audible gasp escaped Alexandra's lips. My mother Eleanor paled as though someone had drawn a dagger across her chest. My father's face froze, a mask of silent fury. "For nearly 3 decades, you have led this company with an iron will, Father," I continued, voice firm but not unkind. "You have expanded our operations across the Asia-Pacific region, acquired 3 major competitors, and built this business into a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. But you never welcomed my ideas, never valued my perspective. You dismissed my questions about sustainable practices, digital transformation, and workforce welfare as mere distractions." He opened his mouth, then closed it again without a word. The waiter approached, carrying platters of roast turkey, glazed carrots, and sweet potato mash. The aroma filled the room, comforting, almost ironic in the face of the upheaval. I stood slowly, signaling that I intended to make a toast. Glasses were poured, crystal flutes of champagne from our own vineyard in the Yarra Valley, another Rivers legacy. I raised my glass. "To Rivers & Sons Engineering. May it finally embrace the future, guided by fresh vision and unafraid of change." I paused, scanning the faces around me. Some were filled with shock, others with resentment, but beneath those emotions, I detected something I had never seen before, a glimmer of respect. "Happy Thanksgiving," I concluded. "Now, let us eat, and let us talk about where we go from here." As our forks touched the plates, I felt a curious lightness, as though the century-old weight of family expectations had lifted. Tonight marked the beginning of a new chapter, one not defined by birthright or tradition, but by innovation, courage, and the willingness to prove one's worth on one's own terms. My earliest memories of the Rivers family estate are framed by the soaring Tudor eaves, the manicured rose gardens, and the ever-present hum of machinery from the adjacent fabrication wing. Even as a child, I sensed the weight of expectation in every polished marble corridor and polished walnut panel. Father's office, its massive oak desk carved with the family crest, was hallowed ground. Mother's drawing room, where silk drapes framed crystal chandeliers, read like a museum of Rivers and Sons Engineering's past triumphs. Photographs of my great-grandfather overseeing the first casting of river turbines, awards from the 1950s for precision gear manufacturing, and statuettes that shone with the pride of a family legacy. I was born seventh in a line of male heirs, 2 older brothers and 4 elder cousins. Yet somehow I inherited my mother's quiet strength and my father's steely gaze. While my brothers excelled at model building kits and factory floor tours, I gravitated toward the blueprint table in the corner of the drawing room, fascinated by the elegant arcs and coloured pencil notes that detailed complex hydraulics. At 6, I would sneak sketches of alternative valve designs into Father's briefcase, only to have them returned a few days later, with annotations in his precise hand. Interesting, but impractical. Thanksgiving dinners were less about gratitude and more about hierarchy. The table's mahogany surface stretched 30 feet, allowing room for the 60 or so extended relatives and board members who gathered each year. As the children were dismissed to the playroom, Father would make his toast to Rivers and Sons engineers of all generations, praising my eldest brother Tristan for negotiating the new Korean supplier contract, and my cousin Ethan for securing latest government defense bid. My own accomplishments, my pilot's license at 16 or the first place award I won at the statewide robotics fair, went unmentioned, as though they belonged to an alternate universe. I sat at the end of the table, silently nibbling on cranberry relish and barely tasting the roast pheasant. My mother, Eleanor, was a consummate hostess. She wore her role like a perfectly tailored sheath dress. While Father drilled the gentlemen in strategic acquisitions, Eleanor circulated among the ladies, overseeing the china pattern and floral arrangements, discreetly patting my hand when I dropped my napkin. She never contradicted my father in public, yet I knew she admired the spark in my eyes, the way I questioned why we continued pouring waste oil into the harbour rather than investing in closed-loop filtration. School holidays offered brief reprieves. During summer breaks, I worked alongside my maternal aunt, Seraphine Davenport, at her small design studio across town. There, I learned to appreciate form as well as function, how a well-balanced chassis could reduce friction losses, or how an ergonomic grip on a hand tool protected workers' hands over long shifts. Aunt Seraphine's belief in my creativity became a rare source of affirmation. "Jordan," she said one July afternoon, tracing my pencil sketch of a novel pump housing, "you're thinking like an inventor, not just an heir. Don't let that spark go out." By the age of 16, I had built and programmed a rudimentary automated scheduling system for the maintenance crews at our northern facility. It cut down time by 1/4 and saved the company thousands in overtime costs. I spent weeks compiling a formal report, line charts in cobalt blue, projected savings in forest green, eager to present it at the next board meeting. Father nodded politely over a single slide, then quietly shelved my proposal. "We'll consider hiring external consultants for that," he said, as though my youthful work did not qualify. Later, I discovered that Tristan had delivered essentially the same system 2 years later, with none of my data, and earned commendation from the CEO for forward-thinking leadership. That was the moment I realized that, in the Rivers family, merit was not measured by results but by adherence to unspoken traditions. Success, as defined by my father, required wearing the right ties, reciting the company motto, engineering tomorrow today, and never, ever upstaging the male lineage. Any deviation from that script was met with polite dismissal. School became my refuge. At West Shore Technical High School, my programming teacher, Mr. Patel, encouraged my ambition. "You have the mind of a strategist," he told me, adjusting his spectacles. "Don't let outdated expectations limit you." Under his guidance, I won a statewide scholarship in industrial optimization, which ultimately paved the way to my acceptance at Monash University's School of Engineering, rather than the more traditional path of the Rivers Business Academy, now simply a ceremonial institution for children of the board. Leaving home at 18 felt like shedding a second skin. As our black BMW glided out of the estate gates for the final time, I watched the rose trellis fade into the distance. I carried with me a backpack full of circuit boards, notebooks brimming with schematics, and a fierce determination to prove that innovation, not lineage, was the true measure of capability. And so began my journey away from the gilded cage of rivers and suns, toward a world where questions were welcome and ideas, not birthright, held the power to reshape an industry. Leaving home for Monash University felt like stepping through a portal to another world. Melbourne's skyline shimmered beneath a cloudless sky as our car pulled away from the gravel drive of the Rivers estate. I stared out the window at the receding silhouette of red brick walls and neatly clipped hedges, feeling both exhilarated and terrified. I carried little more than a backpack full of textbooks, a battered laptop, and an unshakable conviction that my ideas mattered, even if my family would not admit it. The campus of the School of Engineering was a hive of energy and conversation. Students in bright lab coats clustered around prototype drones, others huddled at whiteboards, sketching circuits in riotous colours. Hallways echoed with discussions of thermodynamics and artificial intelligence, none of which began with, "That's not how business works." For the first time, I was surrounded by peers who saw my questions as starting points, not affronts to tradition. My first assignment was deceptively simple: design an energy-efficient heating module for a legacy industrial furnace. Whereas my Rivers upbringing had taught me to respect existing designs without question, my professors encouraged me to challenge the status quo. Dr. Ingrid Zhao, my lecturer in sustainable systems, took my initial sketch, a lightweight composite wrap infused with phase change materials, and held it up to the projector. "This has serious potential," she said, her eyes shining. "Don't be afraid to refine it." Her approval felt like a benediction. Outside the classroom, I formed a study group with 3 classmates: Marco, a mechanical genius from Italy, Priya, a software savant from Mumbai, and Liam, an Australian whose family owned a small foundry in Geelong. We spent long evenings in the lab, arguing over tolerances and trade-offs, scrawling formulas on glass walls, and brewing instant coffee by the litre. Our collaboration became the engine of my growth. Marco taught me to think in 3-dimensional kinetics. Priya introduced me to Python scripts that automated my draft calculations. Liam connected me with local factory managers eager for fresh ideas. By the end of my first semester, our team won the Faculty Innovation Award for a modular sensor network that monitored vibration and heat in real time. An early foray into predictive maintenance. I stood at the podium, accepting the trophy with shaking hands, and recognized that genuine achievement no longer required a family crest. It required creativity, rigor, and a willingness to fail fast and learn faster. During the summer break following my second year, I secured an internship at Brightwave Technologies, a Melbourne startup specializing in clean energy retrofits for heavy industry clients. On my first day, I walked into a converted warehouse buzzing with colorful cables, humming inverters, and discarded prototypes. My mentor, Lucas Nguyen, was a former Boeing engineer who had turned to entrepreneurship to make a tangible environmental impact. He handed me a coffee and said, "Show me what you can break, and then fix." My project was to develop a prototype control unit for integrating solar panels into existing boiler systems. The challenge lay in balancing fluctuating power inputs with the boiler's precise temperature requirements. My first design fried 3 microcontrollers and melted a sensor housing. But each failure taught me more about the interplay of hardware constraints and industrial realities than any lecture ever could. After weeks of iterative testing, soldering new circuits at midnight by the dim glow of a desk lamp, I delivered a unit that cut coal usage by 15% during peak operations. The client's plant manager hugged me and whispered, "You just saved us thousands a week." I felt a warmth that had nothing to do with electronics. Returning to Monash that autumn, I was no longer the uncertain freshman, but a confident engineer with real-world experience. My professors took notice. Dr. Zhao invited me to co-author a paper on adaptive energy management. The dean offered me a teaching assistantship in the Sustainable Systems Lab. Friends I had made over instant noodles and late-night coding sessions asked me to speak at industry panels. For the first time, my name carried weight beyond my family's reputation. Yet, the river's legacy still shadowed me. Emails from home arrived regularly. Reminders of upcoming board dinners I was expected to attend. Gentle chides from mother about appearing before society properly dressed, and veiled threats from father that there would always be a place for me at Rivers and Sons should I change my mind. I saved those messages in a folder labelled Motivation, a private reminder of why I had chosen this path. By the conclusion of my third year, I had completed my honours thesis on closed-loop thermal management, published in a respected journal, and landed a full-time offer from Brightwave in their R&D department. Standing at the crossroads, I faced a decision: return to the family firm with my credentials polished, or strike out on my own and build a business that embodied everything Rivers and Sons never could. Innovation unbound by tradition, sustainability measured in both profit and planet, and a workplace culture that valued curiosity above conformity. I chose the latter. With a small grant from Monash's Entrepreneurship Fund, I founded Embertech Innovations in my tiny apartment downtown. At 21, I was the least experienced CEO in Melbourne, but also the most determined. The journey ahead would test every skill I had honed, from sketching pump housing diagrams to negotiating supply contracts. Yet, in my heart, I knew that the biggest lesson of my Monash years would guide me. True leadership emerges when you dare to ask why, and then act to make things better. Founding Embertech Innovations felt like stepping from a lifeboat onto uncharted waters. I signed the incorporation papers with trembling fingers at a small co-working space in Melbourne's Docklands precinct. The room smelled of brewing coffee and fresh paint, and the walls were plastered with motivational posters, some cliched, some oddly inspiring. My startup bank account held just enough funding from the Monash Entrepreneurship Grant and a small loan backed by my savings. I had a name, Embertech Innovations, and a vision: to deliver modular, sustainable energy solutions for mid-sized manufacturers who lacked the capital for full-scale retrofits. My first hire was Max Lin, a recent Monash graduate who excelled at writing microcontroller firmware. He arrived on my third day, dressed in a hoodie and carrying a beat-up backpack full of Raspberry Pis. "Let's light some fires," he declared with a grin that mirrored my own excitement. Over the next week, we scavenged surplus parts from an electronics recycler, set up our bench with soldering irons and oscilloscopes, and sketched our flagship product: a plug-and-play energy management node that could monitor voltage, current, and temperature, then optimize machinery schedules in real time. Meanwhile, I reached out to my contacts from Brightwave Technologies. My mentor, Lucas Nguyen, introduced me to Philippe Dubois, operations manager at Golden Grain Milling, a family-owned grain processor outside Bendigo. Philippe was intrigued by the idea of reducing his facility's energy bill and carbon footprint without shutting down for months. We arranged a pilot project: retrofit 2 of Golden Grain's older dryers with Embertech nodes over a single weekend. The first installation was chaotic. Wires tangled, sensors misread, and the local electrician frowned at our minimalist schematics. I held my breath as we powered up the system, afraid we'd blown a fuse or tripped the breaker. Instead, the dryer motor hummed steadily, and the node's LED indicators blinked green. Real-time graphs on our laptop showed energy consumption dropping steadily as the node adjusted cycle timing and fan speeds. When the weekend ended, Golden Grain reported a 12% reduction in electricity use. Good, but below our target. Undeterred, Max and I tweaked the control algorithms and added a small predictive model that accounted for ambient humidity. 2 weeks later, consumption fell by 18%. Philippe sent us an ecstatic email praising our game-changing solution. Buoyed by that success, I attended local manufacturing networking events, clutching business cards and trying not to appear desperate. At one such gathering in Geelong, I met Fiona Garcia, head of operations at Oceanic Components, a precision parts manufacturer with state contracts. She asked me to present Embertech's value proposition to her board. I designed a polished slide deck in my apartment, rehearsed my pitch in the mirror, and prayed I wouldn't trip over my words. Standing before Oceanic's directors, I barely recognized myself. Clear voice, confident posture, data-driven recommendations. By the end, the board approved a pilot on 15 high-power CNC machines. That engagement was transformative. Over 3 months, Embertech's nodes reduced Oceanic's peak demand charges by 25%, freeing up capital for maintenance and tooling upgrades. Word spread quickly. A small, scrappy startup was outperforming multinational energy auditors. Our email inquiries tripled. We hired 2 more engineers, Sasha from Ukraine, a digital signal processing expert, and Caleb, an electrician-turned-automation specialist. We crowded into a slightly larger office in the CBD, traded surplus parts for bulk sensor orders, and implemented customer relationship software to manage our growing pipeline. Still, challenges loomed. Cash flow was tight. Invoice delays threatened payroll, and an unexpected component shortage forced us to rewrite firmware on the fly. My evenings blurred into early mornings as I balanced code reviews, sales calls, and investor follow-ups. I refused to ask my family for help, partly out of pride and partly because I wanted to prove I could succeed alone. Yet each setback steeled my resolve rather than breaking it. My Monash professor's mantra echoed in my mind: fail fast, iterate faster. By the time Embertech celebrated its first anniversary, we had 10 pilot clients and a small seed stage investment of $2 million Australian dollars. Our valuation rose from the initial $500,000 to nearly $3 million. I stood before our team, now 6 people strong, in a cramped conference room, and realized we had built something real, something born of curiosity, grit, and the refusal to accept how things are done. In that moment, I sensed the distance between Embertech and Rivers and Sons was closing. We were no longer the scrappy underdog. We were a credible contender in the sustainable manufacturing landscape. And as Embertech looked toward national expansion, I understood that the journey from Forbes lists and prestigious boardrooms back to a humble co-working desk had equipped me to lead not only a startup, but one day, perhaps the very empire I once fled. As Embertech Innovations moved into its 2nd year, momentum carried us forward, but so did the realities of scaling a startup. Our team of 6 engineers, marketers, and operations staff doubled to 12. We traded the cramped, co-working desk for a modest office in South Bank, with room for whiteboards and a small lab bench. I still slept in my apartment, but my dreams now teemed with strategic roadmaps, instead of debugging firmware. Our client roster expanded to include Everbrook Textiles, a sprawling 90-year-old weaving mill outside Ballarat. Their CEO, Deirdre McKenzie, a steely woman in her late 50s, had initially dismissed Embertech as a novelty. Yet when she learned that our nodes could slash her factory's peak hour tariffs by more than 20%, she agreed to a trial on 20 automated looms. The project's success was undeniable. Energy savings cascaded into reinvestments in looms and staff bonuses, and Deirdre personally introduced me at the Premier's Manufacturing Awards, praising Embertech as the little engine that could. Meanwhile, Rivers and Sons Engineering faced its own storms. I monitored public financial disclosures out of professional curiosity. Revenue had plateaued, operating margins slipped to single digits, and the planned expansion of their Yarra Valley facility was delayed by supply chain disruptions. Industry analysts began murmuring that the venerable firm was at risk of being outpaced by more agile competitors. Each report deepened my conviction that the time was ripe for transformative action. Back at Embertech, investor enthusiasm brought a Series A funding round of $10 million Australian dollars, led by Aurora Capital Partners. The influx of capital enabled us to hire seasoned sales executives, establish a Melbourne-based manufacturing partnership for sensor modules, and invest in a small R&D centre in Geelong for hardware prototyping. Our valuation climbed past $20 million, and clients from Brisbane to Perth lined up for pilot projects. I spent long nights refining our long-term vision, a vertically integrated company combining Embertech's software prowess with traditional manufacturing capacity. The logical next step, one that consistently surfaced in strategic discussions, was an acquisition or partnership with an established engineering firm. And none was more symbolic or potentially impactful than Rivers & Sons Engineering, the very company my family had deemed too legacy to change. In late October, I discreetly reached out to an intermediary, my former Monash professor and mentor doctor, Ingrid Zhao, who had connections on corporate boards. Without revealing my identity, she conducted an exploratory discussion with Rivers board members under the guise of a sustainability advisory. Their candid feedback confirmed my suspicions. The board recognized the need for digital integration and cost reduction, but remained unwilling to champion the initiative. Pride and tradition had become the company's greatest obstacles. Armed with this intelligence and backed by Aurora's commitment, I convened an Embertech leadership retreat at Mornington Peninsula. Around a conference table overlooking the bay, Max Lin, Sasha Petrova, Caleb Jones, and I crafted the blueprint for a bold acquisition bid. We would form a holding entity, Horizon Engineering Holdings, to propose a full purchase of Rivers & Sons. The vehicle would obscure Embertech's direct involvement until the deal's conclusion, thus preventing premature rejection by tradition-bound directors. Our financial model projected that by integrating Embertech's predictive maintenance platform and closed-loop energy modules with Rivers' manufacturing footprint, we could boost overall profitability by at least 30% within 2 years. The plan would preserve job security for thousands of employees, upgrade Yarra Valley's long-delayed expansion, and position the combined company as an Australian leader in smart manufacturing. With plans drawn, we engaged Hamilton and Blake M&A to handle the discreet outreach. Simultaneously, I maintained appearances, attending industry panels, presenting Embertech at the National Manufacturing Expo, and hosting quarterly board meetings, convincing key stakeholders of Embertech's credibility and capacity for growth. Throughout November, I juggled Embertech's scaling demands, overseeing the Geelong R&D rollout, negotiating distribution agreements in New Zealand, and finalising our Series B term sheet with Aurora, while coordinating with Hamilton and Blake to keep our intentions confidential. The irony was delicious. My family still viewed me as Dichstuhl, that startup kid who tinkers with sensors, unaware that I was orchestrating the largest strategic move in Rivers & Sons history. By mid-December, Horizon's initial non-binding offer was on the table. It valued Rivers & Sons at 120 million Australian dollars, far above the market's current valuation of 85 million, and included commitments to retain existing management under new performance-linked roles. The board's appetite for a substantial cash premium and a clear modernisation roadmap made them receptive, as long as the buyer remained anonymous. The pieces were in motion. Embertech's next chapter was no longer confined to software modules or pilot programs. It was poised to embrace the very core of my family's legacy, transforming it from a static monument into a dynamic force prepared for the 21st century. All that remained was to see the board's formal acceptance, sign the final papers, and prepare for the moment of revelation that would upend every long-held assumption at the Rivers dinner table. The day the board of Rivers & Sons Engineering formally accepted Horizon Engineering Holdings' offer, I was standing on the mezzanine of our South Bank office, staring out at the Yarra Rivers swell beneath the city lights. My phone buzzed with messages from Hamilton and Blake. Deal approved, awaiting signatures. In that moment, Embertech's journey, sparked in a cramped co-working desk, was poised to merge with my family's proud legacy. The excitement coursed through me, but so did a strange stillness, as though I were on the brink of stepping off a precipice. Over the next 48 hours, Max, Sasha, Caleb and I worked in shifts to prepare our combined integration plan. We refined organizational charts, aligned our R&D roadmaps, and drafted communications to reassure Rivers employees that their jobs and their heritage would be protected. And we arranged for legal counsel to oversee the transfer of shares, ensuring every I was dotted. When the final document landed in my inbox, the subject line read, "Signatories required for Rivers & Sons acquisition." My heart hammering, I appended my e-signature at precisely 11 minutes past 8 on a crisp Thursday morning. Simultaneously, A nearly identical package arrived for the Rivers board members, unaware that the mysterious Horizon was none other than Embertech. By noon, all signatures were obtained. The shares would transfer at 5 p.m., just hours before our annual Rivers family luncheon on the peninsula. As I sat back, the weight of what I had orchestrated settled in. I had taken control of the very empire that once dismissed my ideas as naive, and I had done so on my own terms. That afternoon, I stepped into my modest South Bank office, its walls now adorned with awards from both Embertech and the glowing letters from Golden Grain and Oceanic Components. I composed a brief email to the Embertech team. Colleagues, today we become stewards of Rivers and Sons Engineering. This is the culmination of years of relentless innovation and unwavering belief. Tomorrow, we begin the work of honoring this legacy and inventing its future. Thank you for your dedication. Jordan. I hesitated before hitting send. This message would reshape their perception of our mission, no longer just a nimble startup, but the architect of a century-old institution's rebirth. My next stop was a quick change of attire, away with the hoodie and pressed chinos, in with a navy sheath dress and low heels. I needed to look the part of a Rivers family member once more, if only for one dinner. As I climbed into my car and navigated the winding roads to Mornington Peninsula, I rehearsed the opening words, how to announce that Horizon's anonymous buyer was, in fact, Embertech, and that Rivers and Sons would become a subsidiary of my own company. Arriving at the family luncheon venue, a weathered manor overlooking the bay, I found the dining room abuzz with greetings. Marcus Rivers, looking uncharacteristically relaxed in a deep blue blazer, clasped my hand as I entered. Jordan, so glad you could join us, he said, offering a polite smile. Alexandra lingered in the corner, her sharp gaze curious. Uncle Sebastian whispered, we've received some interesting news today, haven't we? As the luncheon progressed through courses of smoked salmon, wild mushroom risotto and seared lamb loin, the conversation skimmed over pleasantries. Estate. Renovations, local charity drives, and Tristan's latest overseas acquisition. My phone lay face down on the polished table beside my charger. Each vibrate could be a final sign-off alert or a last-minute hiccup. I focused on steadying my breathing. Finally, Father raised his glass of summer white. To family, tradition, and another successful year for Rivers and Sons Engineering. The table mirrored his toast. I rang my fork against the rim of my glass to capture everyone's attention. The clink echoed louder than expected. Thank you, Father, I began. I have a toast of my own. Pausing, I let their eyes shift to me. I tapped my wine glass again. 3 days ago, Embertech Innovations secured majority ownership of Rivers and Sons Engineering through Horizon Engineering Holdings. As of 5 p.m. today, this acquisition is complete. Horizon is a subsidiary of Embertech, making me the principal owner of our family legacy. A gust of stunned silence swept the table. Mother's hand trembled on her napkin. Tristan choked on his risotto. Alexandra's lips parted in shock. My father's face paled to a near Prussian blue. Jordan, he hissed under his breath, how could you? I pressed on, voice calm but firm. This wasn't an act of vengeance. It was a necessary step to secure our future. Embertech's predictive platforms and closed-loop energy systems will reduce operating costs by over 30%. Our R&D centre in Geelong will modernise our oldest facilities. This family business will thrive once it embraces innovation. Tremors of disbelief rippled through the room. Some faces contorted in anger, others in reluctant admiration. I concluded, I offer you partnership, not displacement. Your expertise in manufacturing, your relationships with long-standing clients, these are invaluable. Together, we will build Rivers and Sons into the most advanced smart manufacturing firm in Australia. Father slammed his fist on the table, making silverware jump. I will not be lectured by my daughter. Uncle Sebastian stood. Gentlemen, perhaps this is the only viable path forward. His intervention shifted the tension. Tristan scowled but did not rise. The room held its breath. In that charged moment, I realized that leadership demands boldness, and that bold moves can fracture old loyalties even as they forge new alliances. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Healing rifts, aligning teams, and delivering on the promise of synergy. But tonight, I had proved what I set out to achieve. My vision for manufacturing's future was not just possible, it was imperative. And as my family confronted the reality of Embertech's stewardship, I finally felt the liberation that comes from transforming doubt into opportunity and tradition into progress. In the days that followed the revelation at the Mornington Peninsula luncheon, Rivers and Sons Engineering experienced a seismic shift in atmosphere. Word of Embertech's acquisition spread through the corridors of the Yarra Valley facility like wildfire. Employees who had once braced themselves for layoffs now whispered speculations about upgraded equipment, new sustainability targets, and collaborative innovation workshops. Meanwhile, my family's reaction remained a tempest of pride, resentment, and curiosity. The morning after the luncheon, I arrived at Rivers headquarters by 8 o'clock, wearing a tailored charcoal pantsuit that balanced authority with approachability. My first meeting was with the executive committee, Tristan, the newly designated head of strategic acquisitions, Alexandra, tapped to lead legacy communications, a role integrating public relations with the company's historic brand, and Uncle Sebastian, who agreed to serve as chairman of the board's Transition Oversight Council. Each manila folder on the polished oak conference table contained quarter-by-quarter projections for the next fiscal year, scenarios based on full Embertech integration. Tristan sat rigidly at the head of the table, arms folded. His suit was impeccably pressed, but his eyes betrayed restless anger. "You bypassed me on due diligence," he accused, voice low. "I was the heir apparent for this company." I met his gaze. "You were," I agreed, "but only under the assumption that Rivers and Sons would never change. I respect your strategic insight, Tristan, which is why I need you to lead our M&A expansions moving forward. We cannot allow legacy thinking to override new opportunities." He exhaled through clenched teeth, then picked up his folder. "Very well. Let's discuss potential targets in Southeast Asia." Next, I addressed Alexandra. Her cheeks were still flushed from the luncheon. "Legacy communications would be critical in aligning our century-old brand with a forward-looking mission." She inhaled sharply, then nodded. "I've drafted 3 branding campaigns," she said, sliding glossy mock-ups across the table. "One emphasizes our history, one highlights technological breakthroughs, and one blends both." I examined them, impressed by her professionalism. "We'll run a pilot of the blended campaign at next month's industry conference in Sydney," I decided. Her eyes lit up, and for the first time since I could remember, I sensed genuine pride. Uncle Sebastian, ever the pragmatic advisor, cleared his throat. "Our top priority should be financial stability during integration. We need to reassure creditors and major clients that this transition will strengthen our balance sheet rather than disrupt it." I agreed. Daniel Hayes from Embertech's finance team will provide weekly reports directly to the board. I'll personally host client briefings to outline our roadmap and answer questions. With executive roles clarified, I turned to the assembled team. This morning marks the beginning of Phase 1, infrastructure modernization. Our goal is to reduce energy consumption by 25% across all facilities within 18 months, while increasing overall output by at least 15%. I paused to let the target sink in. We will combine Rivers' heavy machinery expertise with Embertech's energy management nodes, scheduling algorithms, and predictive analytics. Max Lin, now Director of Technology Integration, stood and offered a concise progress report from Embertech's R&D Centre in Geelong. Prototype installations at the Yarra Valley facility were on schedule, firmware updates were iterating smoothly, and manufacturing of the first production run of sensor modules would begin next week. As the meeting concluded, Fatid Al-Hakim, Head of Human Resources, raised a critical concern. What about our frontline operators? Many have worked here for decades and may view these changes as threats. I acknowledged the anxiety. We will launch a series of town hall meetings to demonstrate how our systems enhance safety, reduce manual workload, and preserve jobs. We will also offer cross-training programs so our operators can develop new skills in data analysis and equipment monitoring. By mid-morning, the executive committee dispersed to their respective tasks. I headed to the plant floor, determined to connect directly with employees. The factory echoed with rhythmic clanks and pneumatic hisses. Workers paused as I entered, curiosity and caution mixed in their gazes. I approached a group around a massive stamping press. "Good morning," I called out, raising my voice over machinery noise. "I'm Jordan Rivers, CEO of the combined company. We're here to support you, not replace you." One veteran machinist, Roger, who had been with Rivers and Sons for 34 years, nodded slowly. "We've heard the rumours, miss," he said, "but we appreciate anyone who helps us keep the lights on and our machines running." I smiled. "That's our goal, Roger. Tomorrow, we'll install a prototype energy management node near this press. It will optimize its cycle timing, reduce waste heat, and alert you if maintenance is due." He nodded, and the group offered murmurs of approval. I left the factory floor feeling buoyed by their pragmatic optimism. Returning to my office, I checked my phone. A string of congratulatory emails from Embertech's investors, plus a note from Dr. Ingrid Zhao. "Well done. They're on board." I allowed myself a quiet moment of satisfaction. That evening, I hosted a celebratory dinner at a small bistro in South Bank for the Embertech leadership team. Over locally brewed pale ales and artisanal pizzas, we toasted our first joint board meeting. I raised my glass. To transformation, collaboration, and the knowledge that together we can achieve far more than we ever could apart. Max grinned. To making Rivers and Sons the most advanced manufacturing firm in the Asia Pacific. And in that toast, I sensed the true merging of two worlds. The tradition-bound giants of the past, embracing the innovators of tomorrow, united under a shared vision of progress. Over the next 18 months, we would prove that commitment in real, measurable results and reshape manufacturing as we knew it. The first quarter after integration was a roller coaster of triumphs and growing pains. By March, we had completed the initial retrofit of 3 Rivers and Sons facilities with Embertech's energy management nodes and predictive maintenance software. The combined data streams flowed into our Geelong R&D Centre, where Sasha and Caleb analysed performance metrics in real time. The results were encouraging. One plant's electricity consumption dropped by 22%, while unplanned downtime fell by nearly 30%. Production output at another facility rose by 11% thanks to optimised scheduling. Yet beneath the surface, resistance simmered. I received anonymous notes slipped under my office door, handwritten on old Rivers and Sons letterhead, warning me that change too fast spells chaos. Middle managers at the Yarra Valley plant privately mused that our algorithms were black magic and that only old-school intuition could keep their machines humming. At a quarterly town hall, a junior engineer openly questioned whether our software really understood the complexities of forging cast-iron crankshafts. The remark drew uneasy laughter, and I realised some employees still viewed Embertech's innovations as threats rather than tools. That afternoon, I convened an emergency meeting with Fatid Al-Hakim, our head of human resources, and Priya, now Embertech's director of workforce development. Over peppermint tea in my office, we devised a strategy of collaborative workshops, pairing veteran machinists with our engineers to co-author best practice manuals that blended hands-on expertise with data insights. We scheduled the first session for the following Monday, titled Craftsmanship Meets Code. By week's end, the workshop began in a large conference hall near the Yarra facility. Rows of folding chairs faced a projector screen, displaying fractured historical blueprints alongside lines of live code. To my surprise, Roger, the machinist who had met me weeks earlier, volunteered to introduce the session. He stepped to the podium, cleared his throat, and said in a resonant voice, "I've seen this company built on sweat and precise tolerances. But I've also seen machines break when we least expect it. If these tech whizzes can help me predict failures before they happen, I'm all for it." The room burst into spontaneous applause, and the ice cracked. Over the next 3 hours, veteran foremen sketched their troubleshooting workflows on whiteboards, while our engineers translated those steps into flowcharts and Python pseudocode. By the end of the day, we had drafted a pilot script that would fuse manual inspection checklists with real-time sensor alerts, a hybrid approach that our software team could implement immediately. Meanwhile, I continued to navigate delicate family dynamics. My father, Marcus, appeared at my office unannounced one afternoon, his tie loosened and his expression uncharacteristically unguarded. He sat in my guest chair and said quietly, "Jordan, I've watched today's workshop from the control room. It was enlightening." He paused, folding his hands. "I admit, I feared you were bulldozing our heritage, but I saw skilled men and women engage with your team. They respected you." His words felt like a bridge extending across the chasm between our worldviews. I smiled. "Thank you, Father. My only goal is to preserve Rivers and Sons, and to evolve it for the decades ahead." He nodded, then rose and placed a hand on my shoulder. "Keep me involved. I want to learn." It was the first time he had asked for my guidance rather than dismissing it. Encouraged by that personal breakthrough, I accelerated plans to launch Pilot Phase 2, integrating Embertech's automated analytics into Rivers' supply chain management. Our target was a significant partner, Atlas Steelworks, whose batch orders had historically suffered scheduling conflicts and material shortages. I flew to Adelaide to meet Atlas's CEO, Nadine Wu, a no-nonsense executive known for her rigorous standards. Over coffee in their boardroom overlooking the port, I outlined our proposal: a unified dashboard that would forecast material needs, flag pending maintenance on presses, and optimize shipping windows based on energy cost forecasts. Nadine studied me for a long moment, then leaned back. "If you can deliver even half of what you promise, we'll sign a 3-year service agreement." Those words bore the weight of measured confidence. Back in Melbourne, I celebrated with the team. It was Embertech's largest contract to date, and a powerful validation of our expanded capabilities. By early May, data from Atlas Steelworks integration showed a 34% reduction in inventory holding costs, a 28% improvement in on-time deliveries, and no unplanned downtime at their primary rolling mill. The metrics were beyond our projections. I prepared a case study, co-authored with Priya, and submitted it to the International Journal of Smart Manufacturing. When the article was accepted 3 weeks later, Embertech and Rivers and Sons were suddenly on the radar of industry conferences and trade publications worldwide. We had not only saved jobs and cut costs, we had demonstrated that heritage companies and agile startups could craft a powerful synergy. That same month, at a ceremony in Brisbane, Marcus Rivers and I accepted the National Manufacturing Excellence Award together. Standing on stage in my navy pantsuit and his classic grey blazer, we posed for cameras and offered a united front. As we shook hands, I caught his eye and saw unmistakable pride. In that moment, I understood that transformation was not a solitary act. It was a collaborative journey, one that honoured the past while forging an adaptable, resilient future. This was the true legacy of Rivers and Sons, the courage to evolve without losing sight of who we were. By the time winter's chill began to settle over Melbourne, Embertech and Rivers and Sons had grown from tentative partners into a cohesive, performance-driven organisation. Our collective headcount surpassed 400 employees across 3 continents, and our combined monthly revenues eclipsed what Embertech alone had achieved in its entire second year. Yet with growth came new complexities, coordinating cross-facility priorities, balancing short-term profitability against long-term R&D investments, and maintaining our unified culture despite divided locations. One critical challenge emerged in late July, when sudden policy changes by the Federal Energy Regulator mandated a 30% reduction in peak demand quotas for heavy industry users. This regulation threatened several of our largest Rivers clients, whose legacy equipment already stretched the previous limits. Failure to comply would incur steep penalties and could drive clients to competitors who offered turnkey solutions. Recognizing the urgency, I convened a war room meeting at our Collins Street headquarters. The space buzzed with whiteboards covered in flowcharts, sticky notes marking key action items, and real-time dashboards projected on a large screen. Around the table sat the leaders guiding each pillar of our operation. Max Lin, Director of Technology Integration, responsible for node deployment and firmware updates. Sasha Petrova, Head of Advanced Analytics, who managed predictive models and data insights. Daniel Hayes, Chief Financial Officer, tracking regulatory costs and capital allocation. Fiona Garcia, Vice President of Client Success, formerly of Oceanic Components, advocating for client perspectives. Priya Kapoor, Director of Workforce Transformation, overseeing training and change management, I opened the meeting with a direct assessment. The new regulations are non-negotiable. Clients need solutions on their doorstep within 90 days, or they face fines. Failure is not an option. Max tapped at his tablet. We can fast-track a firmware patch that shifts peak loads by staggering motor start times. That'll buy us roughly 3 to 5% reduction immediately. Sasha nodded. Our analytics team can re-optimize batch scheduling to avoid energy spikes during expensive hours. It requires minimal hardware changes, just updated algorithms. Daniel calculated on his laptop. If we subsidize the initial deployment costs, clients will see entire quarter savings. Aurora Capital will cover up to 50% of the capex under our emergency fund clause. We just need formal approval. Fiona spoke up, voice steady but urgent. We must also manage client communication carefully. They'll need clear, transparent roadmaps, milestone dates, projected savings, and assurances of minimal downtime. Priya added, operators will need hands-on guidance. We should schedule training sessions and provide quick reference guides to avoid confusion or pushback on the plant floor. Within 2 hours, we had a clear, multi-phase action plan. 1. Immediate firmware update, week 1 to 2. Ember Tech's engineering team pushes the patch to all active nodes at risk. Second, algorithmic rescheduling, week 2 to 4. Sasha's team deploys updated scheduling models via secure cloud link. Moondram. Client workshops, week 4 to 6. Fiona and Priya co-host online and on-site briefings to explain changes, demonstrate dashboards, and gather feedback. Nangavde. Financial structuring, week 1 through 6. Daniel secures fund allocation from Aurora, sets up client cost-sharing agreements, and finalizes incentive rebates. Eindaude. Regulatory compliance reporting, week 6 to 8. Max and Sasha prepare documentation for each facility to submit to the energy regulator, certifying adherence. I close the meeting with a resounding affirmation. This is our moment to prove that EmberTech Rivers is the industry's fastest, most reliable partner. Let's move. Over the next 2 months, the plan unfurled with impressive speed. Max's firmware patch rolled out smoothly to over 70 facilities with no critical failures. Sasha's rescheduling engine shaved peak hour loads by an average of 8%, exceeding expectations. Fiona led a series of virtual workshops attended by more than 400 plant managers, while Priya's training modules empowered frontline operators to monitor real-time energy dashboards on mobile tablets. Simultaneously, Daniel finalized cost-sharing agreements that passed through legal and compliance reviews without delay. By mid-September, our clients collectively reported an average reduction of 32% in peak demand charges, well beyond the regulatory requirement. The financial savings ranged from several $100,000 to over $1 million per facility, a tangible boon during a period of market volatility. On September 21st, I joined the CEO panel at the Melbourne Energy Forum to present our case study, Rapid Compliance and Profitability Through Agile Innovation. Standing before an audience of industry executives and government officials, I detailed our integrated approach from firmware to finance. The keynote sparked animated discussion and multiple invitations for follow-up pilots, proof that our solution was both visionary and pragmatic. Returning home that evening, I reflected on how far we'd come. From the first EmberTech prototype in a co-working space to this regulatory triumph, the journey had demanded resilience, cross-disciplinary collaboration, and unwavering belief in our core values. Yet, I knew our work was not done. As the forum attendees dispersed with new leads and regulatory clout, I glanced at my phone. A message from my father, simply reading, "Proud of you." Beneath that small note lay the greatest affirmation. That transformation, when executed with integrity and expertise, can bridge the divide between legacy and innovation, and inspire even the most traditional minds to embrace the future. As October deepened, EmberTech Rivers prepared to enter uncharted territory, international expansion into Southeast Asia. Our Geelong R&D Centre had proven the viability of merging software with legacy manufacturing, and our Brisbane office had established regional support. Now we needed to demonstrate that the combined company could deliver consistent results across borders and cultures. My first step was a business trip to Singapore. Accompanied by Max Lin, now Senior Vice President of Global Technology, and Fiona Garcia, I boarded the midnight flight from Melbourne, reviewing briefing folders on the plane. Our target partner was Meridian Precision Engineering, a family-owned operation in Johor that supplied aerospace components to major airlines. Meridian's CEO, Arjun Malik, had been skeptical of Embertech's distant origins, but impressed by our case studies in Australia. He agreed to a pilot project on critical milling machines at his facility, with a clause for regional rollout if we met performance guarantees. Arriving at Changi Airport before dawn, I felt the familiar mixture of anticipation and pressure. After a restful night at the hotel, we proceeded to Meridian's plant the next morning. The sprawling complex hummed with activity. Robotic arms polishing turbine blades, machinists navigating narrow catwalks above high-precision mills. Arjun greeted us in his office, adorned with framed photographs of his father, shaking hands with airline executives in 1993. He offered a polite smile. "We're eager to see what Embertech can do," he said, "but our tolerances are unforgiving. Errors in the parts can cost lives." His tone was courteous, but firm. Max stepped forward. "Our predictive maintenance module will monitor spindle vibration and temperature fluctuations in real time. We'll send alerts to your control center when parameters approach critical thresholds." He tapped his tablet to display a live data feed from a test machine in Geelong. Arjun watched the graphs scroll. "If this works as advertised, we'll implement it across all 15 mills." He extended his hand. "Let's get started." Over the next weekend, our team installed 40 sensor nodes across 2 critical lines. We configured the cloud integration through Meridian's secure network and ran calibration tests. By Monday morning, live data streamed onto our joint dashboard. Fiona guided the plant's operations manager through interpreting heat maps and trend analyses, while Sasha's team in Melbourne refined the alarm thresholds remotely. On Tuesday, tragedy nearly struck. One mill's spindle housing began exhibiting abnormal vibration spikes due to misaligned tooling. The Embertech alert triggered an immediate work order dispatch, and maintenance crews halted the line before catastrophic failure occurred. Later, as I toured the shop floor, the maintenance supervisor, an engineer named Noor, paused mid-conversation. "If you hadn't warned us, that spindle would have shredded itself," she said quietly. "You've just saved us over 200,000 Singapore dollars in replacement costs and downtime." Arjun later confirmed our success at a dinner by the marina. "Embertech Rivers has shown me that heritage and high-tech can coexist," he said, raising his glass of Singapore Sling. "Let us discuss a full rollout." Returning to Melbourne, I briefed the executive committee on Meridian's pilot. A 35% reduction in unplanned stoppages and a 14% increase in parts uptime. Daniel Hayes projected that Southeast Asia could add 500 new nodes within the next fiscal year, generating a $20 million revenue boost. Meanwhile, back in Australia, my father, Marcus Rivers, invited me for an evening walk along the Yarra River near our South Bank office. We spoke of Meridian's success and the importance of global diversification. He admitted, "I underestimated the value of your software expertise on an international scale." I smiled, appreciating his candor. Together, we're no longer just a national leader. We're a global challenger. That same week, Embertech's board approved my proposal to open a small technical center in Kuala Lumpur, staffed by local engineers and supported by remote analytics from Geelong. This center would shorten response times, tailor firmware to regional equipment variations, and cultivate relationships with Southeast Asian universities for future talent. Our Aurora Capital investors applauded the plan, and funds were allocated within days. October closed with Embertech Rivers hosting our first global webinar. Smart Manufacturing Beyond Borders. Over 500 participants logged in from nearly 20 countries, drawn by case studies from Golden Grain Milling to Meridian Precision. I presented live from our Collins Street headquarters, sharing lessons learned, best practices, and future roadmaps. The chat stream filled with inquiries, partnership requests, and enthusiastic endorsements. As I signed off, the magnitude of our journey struck me. A modest startup turned family heirloom had transcended continents in less than 24 months. The path ahead would present new challenges, cultural nuances, regulatory landscapes, and technical complexities, but our combined strengths of tradition and innovation had proven formidable. And within that synergy lay the true promise of Embertech Rivers to engineer tomorrow's solutions, today, anywhere in the world. Entering the second year of our international expansion, Embertech Rivers confronted new complexities of scale and governance. With operations now spanning 4 continents, from Melbourne and Singapore to our newly established Kuala Lumpur centre, our organisational chart had thickened. What began as a tight-knit team of 6 engineers had burgeoned into a global workforce of over 500. Major clients included Meridian Precision in Malaysia, Atlas Steelworks in Australia, and even a consortium of textile manufacturers in Vietnam. Amid this growth, my focus shifted toward ensuring our leadership structure could support both the entrepreneurial agility of Embertech and the institutional rigour of Rivers & Sons. In February, I convened our first Global Leadership Summit in Melbourne. Senior executives flew in from every region. Max Lin oversaw technology integration, Sasha Petrova led advanced analytics, and R&D Fiona Garcia directed client success. Daniel Hayes managed finance and investor relations, and Priya Kapoor championed workforce development. In addition, we welcomed 2 new board members, Dr. Ingrid Zhao, representing Monash University's Sustainable Manufacturing Institute, and Marcus Rivers Sr., a retired Director Emeritus of Rivers & Sons Engineering. Our summit agenda spanned 3 days. Day 1 centered on operational alignment, refining key performance indicators so that factory yields, energy savings, and client satisfaction metrics followed uniform definitions worldwide. We harmonized software deployment protocols, ensuring firmware updates could roll out simultaneously across data centers in Australia, Asia, and Europe. We also finalized the enterprise resource planning, ERP integration, unifying procurement, inventory, and maintenance workflows under a single dashboard. The result? A real-time view of production and resource consumption across all facilities, accessible from any mobile device. Day 2 delved into strategic innovation. Sasha unveiled our next-generation EmberCore platform, a combination of edge computing sensor arrays and AI-driven anomaly detection that would anticipate equipment failures up to 2 weeks in advance. Pilots in Singapore and Melbourne had shown a 45% reduction in unplanned downtime. We committed to full rollout by Q4, even as R&D budget allocations increased by 20%. Concurrently, Max proposed an open architecture API so partners and third-party developers could build custom modules atop EmberCore, fostering an ecosystem rather than a closed system. The board unanimously endorsed both initiatives, recognizing that scaling innovation demanded a broader network of contributions. Day 3 emphasized leadership and culture. I led a session on values and vision, reminding attendees that our strength lay in the interplay of Rivers & Sons manufacturing heritage and Embertech's startup ethos. We introduced our new Bridge Builders program, matching experienced plant managers with junior data scientists for 6-month rotations, encouraging cross-disciplinary mentorship. Priya rolled out a global training portal with micro-learning modules in 4 languages, covering everything from software troubleshooting to change management best practices. We closed with an open forum town hall where employees voiced questions and suggestions, fostering transparency and reinforcing that every role, from janitorial staff to C-suite, could shape our collective future. Amid the summit's successes, one persistent challenge surfaced: ensuring governance kept pace with growth. To that end, Marcus Rivers Sr. proposed a formal advisory council, comprising external experts in finance, sustainability, and technology. He suggested quarterly sessions to stress-test strategic plans, mitigate risk, and uphold corporate ethics, particularly around data privacy and environmental compliance. Recognizing the wisdom in his council, I asked him to chair the council, with Dr. Zhao and Daniel as co-chairs. Their oversight would supplement our operational board meetings, adding an extra layer of seasoned perspective. That evening, during a lakeside dinner at Albert Park, I reflected on the path that had brought me here. Just 3 years earlier, Embertech had been little more than a bold idea, sketched on a rented co-working desk. Now, through strategic acquisitions and transformative partnerships, our combined enterprise stood at the forefront of a global industrial revolution. As I raised a glass of Yarra Valley Pinot Noir with the summit attendees, I felt both pride and humility. Pride in what we had built, humility knowing that sustaining innovation required constant learning and adaptation. Returning to my office the next morning, I drafted an internal memo outlining the summit's key decisions. Embercore rollout timelines, Bridge Builders launch dates, Advisory Council charter, and the final KPI dashboards. I emailed it to the leadership group, adding a personal note. Our summit has set a clear course for Embertech Rivers. Let's remember that every breakthrough begins with a question, what if, and is realized by a team united in purpose. Thank you for your steadfast dedication and bold creativity. As the memo circulated, I sensed a renewed energy across our global operations. Teams were already discussing next steps for the API launch. HR was organizing the first Bridge Builders matches, and Marcus Rivers Sr. had convened the inaugural Advisory Council meeting for early March. In the weeks to come, our challenge would be to translate summit resolutions into tangible results, and to continue forging alliances between tradition and innovation, heritage and progress, past and future. For in business, as in life, growth is not an endpoint, but an ongoing journey of curiosity, collaboration, and courageous leadership. As autumn settled over Melbourne, the integration of Embertech and Rivers & Sons entered its most critical phase yet, scaling Embercore's edge computing modules from pilot installations to full deployment across all 120 manufacturing lines worldwide. With regulatory pressures, client expectations, and investor scrutiny mounting, our ability to execute flawlessly would determine whether the combined company could sustain its rapid growth or buckle under complexity. I began October by convening a global deployment task force. The team included Max Lin, Senior Vice President of Global Technology, leading hardware logistics and field installation. Sasha Petrova, Chief AI Officer, overseeing model customization and remote analytics. Daniel Hayes, CFO, managing capital expenditures and cost tracking. Fiona Garcia, Senior Vice President of Client Success, coordinating on-site support and feedback. Priya Kapoor, Chief People Officer, directing training and change management. Over video link, we reviewed the Embercore rollout schedule. 1. Phase 1, weeks 1 to 4. Upgrade firmware and deploy edge nodes at all Australian facilities. Dusra. Phase 2, weeks 5 to 8. Expand to Southeast Asian sites, prioritizing Meridian Precision and Atlas Steelworks. Third Phase 3, weeks 9 to 12. Install in European partner plants, led by our pilot client in Germany, Helix Automotive Components. Nangavde. Phase 4, weeks 13 to 16. Complete global coverage with hotspots in North America and the Middle East. Max confirmed procurement of the 5,000 new sensor modules and microservers needed. Sasha's team had finalized localized AI models to account for machinery variations in each region. Daniel secured an additional $15 million line of credit for capital outlays, with terms negotiated to minimize interest costs. Fiona and her regional directors had scheduled over 200 on-site visits for installation and operator training. Priya had created multilingual e-learning modules, with progress tracked through our learning management system. To manage risk, we established daily pulse checks, short stand-up meetings at 4 overlapping time zones, to surface issues early. A shared dashboard displayed key metrics: installation progress, model accuracy rates, client satisfaction scores, and budget variance. By combining agile methodology with enterprise governance, we aim to keep momentum without sacrificing control. On week 2, we encountered our first major snag. A customs delay in Jakarta held up a shipment of 200 edge nodes bound for our joint venture plant with Nusantara Textiles. Indonesian regulations required additional factory audits, pushing the delivery back by 7 days. Recognizing the potential failure cascade, I authorized Max to reroute a backup shipment from our Kuala Lumpur center, absorbing expedited freight costs under Daniel's contingency fund. Within 48 hours, installations resumed, and the delay did not impact clients' production schedules. Simultaneously, Sasha's team flagged an unexpected anomaly. In the tubular steel rolling mill at Atlas Steelworks, the AI model's false alarm rate spiked to 20%, compared to the usual 2 to 3%. A high rate of alerts risks operator fatigue and erodes trust in the system. Working with our German data specialists and Atlas's metallurgical engineers, Sasha identified the culprit. Fluctuating ingress of ambient steam was distorting vibration signatures. A quick algorithmic adjustment, subtracting baseline steam signatures, brought false alarms back under 5% within 24 hours. Each of these challenges underscored a core lesson. True intelligent systems require both robust technology and deep domain expertise. Our success depended on cross-functional teams collaborating to interpret data in context, rather than imposing one-size-fits-all models. By mid-November, installations in Australia and Southeast Asia were 95% complete, with clients reporting a 15 to 20% drop in energy consumption and a 20% reduction in unplanned downtime. European rollouts had begun smoothly, and our Helix automotive pilot in Stuttgart achieved a 30% boost in throughput within the first week. Encouraged by results, I approved an accelerated timeline for North American partners, kicking off with a major automotive supplier in Detroit. Throughout this period, I maintained direct communication with our largest clients' CEOs. Personal check-in calls, progress dashboards, and quarterly business reviews ensured transparency and built trust. In one call, the CFO of Meridian Precision said, "Jordan, your team's responsiveness and attention to detail have turned Embercore into an indispensable part of our operations." Comments like that reinforce the importance of aligning technical excellence with client service. Internally, I hosted coffee with the CEO sessions, informal video chats open to any employee, from data scientists to factory mechanics. These sessions surfaced valuable grassroots feedback, ideas for dashboard enhancements, suggestions for ergonomic device mounting, and kudos for regional support teams. They also fostered a sense of unity. Despite our size, we remained connected through shared purpose. As December approached, the task force gathered for a final go/no-go review. With over 90% of units deployed, average false alarm rates under 5%, and client satisfaction above 98%, the data spoke for itself. I declared, "We have achieved global coverage. Embercore is live on 6 continents, serving 200 major facilities. Our target return on investment will be realized by mid-next year." The room erupted in applause, a testament to months of relentless effort. That evening, I stood on the terrace of our South Bank office, watching city lights dance on the river. The path from a small startup through family tumult to global leader had demanded resilience, strategic foresight, and unwavering collaboration. But in the glow of our collective achievement, I knew the journey toward continuous improvement would never end, and that the true measure of success lay in staying curious, adaptable, and united in pursuit of innovation. With Embercore fully deployed across all major facilities, my focus shifted toward optimizing our combined product portfolio and exploring new market verticals. In early January, I convened a cross-functional strategy council to map out growth opportunities for the coming year. The council, comprising senior leaders from technology, operations, finance, marketing, and human resources, met in our South Bank boardroom, sunlight glinting off the Yarra River beyond the windows. I opened the session with a concise assessment of our current position. We have successfully integrated Embertech's software and analytics with Rivers and Sons' manufacturing footprint. Our combined revenues exceeded 100 million Australian dollars last quarter, and client retention stands at 95%. Now, we must identify adjacent markets and value-added services to sustain momentum. Max Lin proposed expanding into predictive quality control, using sensor data to detect manufacturing defects before they occur. Our vibration and thermal analytics have proven reliable, he explained. If we integrate surface inspection cameras and machine vision algorithms, we can reduce scrap rates by up to 50%. Sasha Petrova built on this idea, presenting preliminary results from a pilot at Oceanic Components. Their defect rate fell from 4% to 2% after we layered vision-based quality checks atop our existing maintenance alerts. This capability differentiates us, she said. It transforms Embercore from a cost savings tool into a revenue enhancement solution. Fiona Garcia advocated for a comprehensive service offering. Clients will value end-to-end uptime guarantees, combining energy management, predictive maintenance, and now predictive quality control. We can package this as Ember Complete, with tiered subscription models. Daniel Hayes reminded us to ground ambitions in financial prudence. We must model revenue impacts carefully and ensure our cost structure scales. Hardware for machine vision will add capex, so we should pilot Ember Complete with a subset of clients before full rollout. Priya Kapoor emphasized workforce readiness. Introducing vision systems will require new skill sets on the plant floor. We should collaborate with trade schools and universities to develop certification programs for machine vision technicians. I synthesized the ideas. 1. Pilot Ember Complete at 3 major clients, Oceanic Components, Meridian Precision, and Atlas Steelworks, during Q2. 2. Partner with academic institutions in Melbourne, Stuttgart, and Kuala Lumpur to create certification curricula. Moondrum. Develop tiered subscription packages with clear SLAs, risk-sharing incentives, and optional financing for hardware investments. Nangavde. Launch marketing campaign at the International Manufacturing Expo in Munich, showcasing Ember Complete through live demonstrations. The Council approved these initiatives unanimously. I felt a surge of excitement. This represented the next evolutionary leap, transforming Embertech Rivers from a transformative retrofit supplier into a comprehensive manufacturing-as-a-service provider. Later that week, I traveled to Stuttgart to finalize details with Helix Automotive's executive team. Seated in their gleaming boardroom, I presented the Ember Complete proposition: real-time energy optimization, predictive maintenance, and defect detection analytics under a unified platform. Helix's CTO, Dr. Annika Bauer, listened intently, then asked point-blank, "What if we only need 1 or 2 services? Can we customize the package?" I answered, absolutely. Ember Complete is modular. You can select individual services or the full suite. Pricing scales accordingly, so you pay only for what you use. She nodded, satisfaction evident. By the end of our meeting, Helix agreed to pilot the full suite on 2 of their high-precision stamping lines. Back in Melbourne, news of the Ember Complete launch generated a flurry of inbound inquiries. Marketing pulled together webinars, white papers, and case studies, while our sales team, bolstered by newly hired regional directors, engaged prospects in Europe, North America, and Asia. The reception was overwhelmingly positive. Manufacturing executives recognized the value of a single partner, delivering multiple, integrated services. Amid these strategic developments, I continued to nurture my relationship with my family. My father, Marcus Rivers, had embraced a new role as Senior Advisor for Heritage Affairs, overseeing preservation of our company archives and guiding my efforts to honor Rivers & Sons' storied past. On a crisp February afternoon, he invited me to the original steel mill in Bendigo, now fully retrofitted with Embercorp. We walked among the humming machines as he recounted stories of his first years as an apprentice, his pride evident with each recollection. "I never thought I'd see this place run with digital controls," he admitted, resting a hand on a sensor-equipped conveyor. "But you've proven me wrong, in the best way possible." I smiled. "I couldn't have done it without your willingness to learn." He chuckled. "We're a team now, Jordan." That's what matters. As I looked up at the towering brick kilns, now glowing softly under the ambient light of our edge nodes, I felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The journey from family skepticism to genuine partnership had been arduous, but together we had forged an enterprise that honored tradition while embracing innovation. With Ember Complete on the horizon and global expansion accelerating, the future beckoned with both challenge and promise. Yet, in that moment, at the heart of the Bendigo mill, I was reminded that transformation begins not with grand acquisitions or cutting-edge algorithms, but with people, trust, collaboration, and a shared belief that even the most enduring legacies can evolve for the better. As winter gave way to spring, Embertech Rivers entered a decisive chapter, preparing for a potential initial public offering, IPO, to secure capital for further global expansion. Though private equity and venture capital had fueled our growth to date, an IPO promised access to broader financial markets and a valuation that reflected our status as a global leader in smart manufacturing. Yet, a public listing also meant intensified scrutiny, rigorous compliance, and the need to tell a compelling story to investors, one that balanced our heritage with our innovation-driven trajectory. In March, I assembled our IPO steering committee in the South Bank boardroom. Present were Daniel Hayes, CFO, responsible for financial positioning and regulatory filings; Sasha Petrova, Chief AI Officer, to articulate our technological moat; Max Lin, Vice President of Global Technology, to outline our hardware-software integration strategy; Fiona Garcia, Senior Vice President of Client Success, to provide testimonials and case study metrics; Orchestrated, Priya Kapoor, Chief People Officer, to address governance, culture, and talent retention; Monica Tanaka, newly hired Chief Legal Officer, to navigate securities law and disclosure requirements; Andrew Whitmore, a banking partner from Southern Cross Capital, serving as our lead underwriter liaison. I opened the meeting with a strategic framing. An IPO will solidify Embertech River's leadership in smart manufacturing and provide the resources for accelerated R&D, targeted acquisitions in Europe and North America, and continued investment in our talent pipeline. But we must craft a narrative that resonates with public market investors, a proven track record of revenue growth, global scale, and defensible technology. Daniel presented our financial highlights: 3-year compound annual growth rate of 42%, recurring revenue streams from subscription-based Ember Complete contracts comprising 60% of total revenue, gross margins of 55%, and EBITDA margins approaching 20%. Operating cash flow had turned decisively positive last quarter, enabling self-funded R&D and minimizing dilution. Sasha followed with a deep dive on the Ember Core and Ember Complete platforms. She emphasized our patent portfolio, currently 20 active patents covering edge computing architectures, predictive maintenance algorithms, and machine vision defect detection, and our 3 pending patents in adaptive robotics control. Our technology moat, she explained, lies in the seamless interoperability of hardware and AI, coupled with a developer API that fosters an ecosystem of third-party modules. Max highlighted our manufacturing partnerships, a joint venture, microserver fabrication line in Kuala Lumpur capable of producing 10,000 nodes per quarter, plus an assembly plant in Geelong for quality control. He presented our upcoming rollout of Ember Edge Pro, a ruggedized version designed for extreme environments, mining operations in Western Australia, offshore fabrication yards in the Gulf of Mexico, and cold storage warehouses in Scandinavia. This product line extension promised to open verticals beyond discrete manufacturing. Fiona shared glowing client testimonials. Meridian Precision had reported a 60% reduction in critical machine failures since full Ember Complete adoption. Atlas Steelworks achieved a 30% increase in on-time deliveries. Helix Automotive secured multi-year contracts with OEMs on the strength of our quality insights. She proposed inviting key clients to participate in our IPO roadshow, underscoring the tangible impact of our solutions. Priya emphasized organizational readiness. Our employee retention rate stood at 98%, thanks to competitive equity packages and career development programs. She introduced a Board Observer program that included emerging leaders from our regional centers, ensuring diverse perspectives as we transition to a public company. Governance frameworks were already in place, a 3-tier board with independent directors, audit and compensation committees, and rigorous data privacy protocols. Monica outlined the regulatory timeline, filing a draft prospectus with the Australian Securities Exchange, ASX, by Q3, undergoing a 2-month review and launching the IPO roadshow across Sydney, London, and New York. She flagged key disclosure areas, intellectual property risk, supply chain dependencies, and potential competition from major industrial automation firms, and proposed mitigation language and a clear use of proceeds narrative. Andrew from Southern Cross Capital reassured the team, market appetite for high-growth, tech-enabled industrial companies remained strong, and our blend of heritage, profitability, and innovation positioned us as one of the ASX's most compelling candidates this year. He projected an initial valuation range of 1.2 to 1.5 billion Australian dollars, assuming stable market conditions. After hours of discussion, we reached consensus on the IPO blueprint. 1. Finalize prospectus with transparent financial projections, risk disclosures, and growth strategies. 2. Coordinate roadshow with selected investor presentations, highlighting client successes and product demonstrations. 3. Strengthen analyst coverage by engaging sector-focused equity research firms. 4. Refine corporate governance and board composition to reflect public company best practices. 5. Lock in underwriter commitments and finalize the timing to avoid calendar congestion. As I closed the meeting, I reflected on how far Embertech Rivers had come, from a modest startup challenging family conventions to a global powerhouse ready for public markets. The journey had demanded vision, resilience, and the ability to unite tradition with cutting-edge technology. Standing at the threshold of an IPO, I felt a renewed sense of purpose to honor our heritage, empower our people, and deliver transformative solutions that would define smart manufacturing for decades to come. Tomorrow, we would begin drafting the prospectus. The week after, we would embark on roadshow planning. And by Q4, the Embertech Rivers name would shine on the ASX, signaling to the world that even century-old legacies can evolve and flourish when guided by innovation, integrity, and unwavering determination. By late November, Embertech Rivers had crossed the final hurdle. Our shares began trading on the Australian Securities Exchange under the ticker ETR. I woke before dawn on listing day, my heart thrumming with anticipation as I reviewed the ER's pre-market briefing at home. The morning sun gleamed off the Rialto Towers as I drove into Collins Street, reflecting my own mixture of excitement and resolve. I arrived at our polished boardroom an hour before the opening bell. Daniel Hayes and Monica Tanaka stood by the live feed screen displaying the ASX countdown, while Max Lin, Sasha Petrova, Fiona Garcia, and Priya Kapoor gathered around the conference table. Andrew Whitmore from Southern Cross Capital dialed in from Sydney, offering words of encouragement. At precisely 9:30 a.m., the screen shifted to a live ticker. Embertech Rivers shares opened at $1.45 Australian cents, above our target range, before settling around $1.38 Australian cents. The room erupted in applause. I stepped forward to ring our ceremonial listing bell, a polished steel emblem engraved with both company logos. As I struck it, the sound resonated like a declaration. Embertech Rivers had arrived. Cameras flashed, video feeds recorded the moment, and an intuitive sense of culmination washed over me. This was more than an IPO. It was the culmination of a vision that began in a cramped Melbourne apartment and matured through perseverance, collaboration, and relentless innovation. That afternoon, I hosted a celebratory lunch at Candlewood Restaurant overlooking the Yarra. I sat between my father, Marcus Rivers, and our chairman of the Advisory Council, Marcus Rivers Sr. The two, who once viewed me as an interloper, now toasted my leadership with genuine pride. My sister, Alexandra, and my brother Tristan joined us, their earlier reservations replaced by warm congratulations. Alexandra raised her glass. To Jordan, who reimagined our legacy and led us into a new era. Tristan nodded, adding, "You've done what none of us dared. You bridged our past and future." As the meal progressed, conversation turned personal. My father leaned in and said quietly, "Seeing Embertech Rivers valued by the market, not just cherished as a family heirloom, means more to me than I can express. You've honored your grandfather's work while forging your own path. I couldn't be prouder." I felt a lump in my throat, the weight of years of doubt and striving lifting in that single moment of acknowledgement. Returning to the office, I spent the late afternoon reviewing our use of proceeds roadmap one last time. Capital would flow into 3 key areas: doubling R&D funding for Ember Edge Pro, establishing 2 additional manufacturing centers in North America and Europe, and launching Ember Labs, a new internal incubator for cutting-edge AI-driven manufacturing solutions. Each initiative reflected our commitment to continuous innovation and global impact. In the evening, I invited the core leadership team to Embertech's roof terrace for a quiet reflection. The city lights shimmered below as I addressed them. This listing is both a milestone and a commencement. We've proven our model works: transformative technology, scalable operations, and a heritage ethos that grounds us. Yet, the market demands more. We must continue to anticipate challenges, adapt to changing environments, and relentlessly pursue excellence. Thank you for your dedication, your creativity, and your willingness to question the status quo. Max raised his glass. To questions that spark solutions. Sasha chimed in. To algorithms that empower people. Fiona added. To partnerships that transcend boundaries. Each toast reinforced our shared values. As midnight approached, I slipped away for a solitary walk along the South Bank promenade. The reflections of city lights on the river mirrored the company's journey. Continuous waves of progress shaped by collaboration between tradition and technology. I paused at a quiet bench and allowed myself to recall the path I had travelled, from the daughter who questioned everything to the CEO who had unified two worlds. In the end, my greatest lesson was clear. Leadership is not about proving detractors wrong, but about building bridges between ideas and execution, heritage and innovation, doubt and conviction. Embertech Rivers would continue to evolve, faced with new challenges and opportunities. Yet with each step, I carried forward the belief that transformation rooted in respect for the past can chart a powerful course into the future. With that conviction warming me against the night air, I looked toward the city skyline and smiled, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring.